Hello everyone, my name is Ben Hoffman. I am the visual arts teacher at Kutztown Area High School. This is my fourth year teaching here. I was a recent Kutztown University graduate several years ago, and now I also serve on the board for PAEA. It's kind of interesting looking at my research study over the past few weeks and seeing how it's evolved. Specifically today, I was fortunate to work with district officials while we were in the beginning stages of a school climate team. And it's kind of interesting because we were talking about what it means to be a part of a community, and very coincidentally, it connects with my research study. So, just kind of diving into it, important aspects of the research study for me include the fact that the art classroom is inherently a special place that brings people together. Whether that's the result of a common interest, a desire to create, or simply a convenient placement for students at times. But at the end of the day, the classroom serves as a foundational community in which learners of all abilities can find a means to connecting with one another. So this prompted me to think a lot about why students do the things that they do, and specifically how we can help foster those communities in our classrooms. And I was really invested in the idea of belonging and what does it mean to belong to a community, specifically in an arts community. So I ended up thinking about it for several days, and I ended up with this question. So myself as a teaching artist, I value the process, and recognize that my experiences, whether through collaboration, self exploration, or imagination, will shape my own understanding of a classroom community. So, some of the focus points that came out of this exploration: what types of experience attribute to one's sense of belonging slash discomfort in the art classroom? Does having a range of learners support a greater welcoming arts community, whether that's advanced or introductory? And I'll speak to that in a few moments. And then, does teaching for creativity build a sense of belonging? So, in my setting, I've been very fortunate to build a program that has both introductory and advanced studios. And my thinking to this study was introductory studios include students of all diversities. We're dealing with students who have very high ability, so those who have not taken art for several years. So it's an amalgamation of students that often don't get to be together. So I was thinking, does this community present new problems? Does it present new things? Or does it create a community of learners that then my advanced students don't have the same? So my advanced students are folks who have taken an art class with me already. Maybe these folks are already invested because they understand the expectation. They have more liberty to try things on their own. So thinking about this, I was really concerned about the experiences that help facilitate that greater sense of community. So in an effort to further examine the tendencies of high school students enrolled in art classes, I was interested in exploring how teachers can develop those authentic experiences simply in the art classroom, hoping to create that comfortable learning environment for students that are either beginning or advanced learners. So, as I started to dive into this a little bit more, I found a few articles that were really intriguing. Two that stood out to me were the work of Karen Cumming, and what I really loved about her work, she spoke to a little bit of inner city motivating urban youth, but there was one text that I really gravitated towards, which was entitled, "So What? Who Cares?" Changing adolescents' attitudes in the art classroom. And this little research study was really pivotal in my own research because it opened up the idea of what it meant for students to be a part of a community and thinking about where their voice is valued. Do we do it in the instruction? Do we do it in the rules and procedures? Do they have ownership over their own space? So these were some of the things that I was being struck with to think about in my own classroom environment. Do the students have the ability to make choices for themselves? Do they have ownership over a space? Do they have ownership in the lessons that we're teaching? So these were starting to things that were kind of motivating me to investigate this a little bit more. And then another article that I found just to be really exciting was the work of Mark Steiner and Cougar, and the title of that one was Sense of Belonging to Schools and 15-Year-Old Students. And again, this reiteration of what it means to belong to a school community. And often we find that choice and inquiry are things that we're pushing in our districts, but it's not always the best thing for students. Sometimes it's simply those one-on-one relationships with students and peer-to-peer relationships. So kind of moving forward, I fought over a few different research models, but I felt that the one methodology that worked best with my practice was research and action research specifically. So compared to some of the other methods, action research provides me the opportunity to triangulate data, which is collected through several accounts: observation, records of individual interviews, And what I really love about it most is that I'm able to reflect my own process into this data. So, through personal endeavors and reflective practices, action research develops a cycle from which I can mold over time. And I thought that was really beautiful for me to be able to revisit this, kind of see what's working for one studio, and then be able to adapt and overcome for that other studio and see if there's a difference or there likenesses. So that was really pivotal in the starting or early stages of this research model. So thinking about the pilot study, I was really interested thinking about one studio. In specific, I chose my drawing and painting studio because in that my advanced students are very much so advanced. They've been with me for 2, maybe 3 years, and these are your students who are excelling, creating authentic ideas without any need of me in that space. They are very self-sufficient. While on the introductory level of drawing and painting, those students are working from the ground up. We start with black and white acrylic, we move to oil later in the semester, breaking it down from pencils. But again, those techniques are things that, in my opinion, need to be covered, but they're gradual to the process of what it means to be a part of this community. So I started this process with a simple student consent form. I asked them to sign off, just acknowledging that I have permission to use them in this data study. And I wanted to be as clear as I could, so I explained to them that I was interested to see how an introductory community compares or differs to an advanced community. And students were very receptive. I did not ask for any parent permission. I wanted to give these students ownership over their data because this was all meant to be anonymous as it was kept. However, it was nice to give them that ownership from the beginning, letting them know that I am interested and invested in what they're going to share. And that definitely did make an impact over the course of the following weeks. So I wrote this and I want to share this. Art making has the power to not only affect schools and the communities that surround them, but empower artists, educators, and outside communities to better work together. A quote from Fusaro, it says, "I realize that while schools and classrooms do not always create communities, they can be a place to envision what community can look and sound like outside the walls of schools." And I think it's really interesting because our classrooms are neither artificial or placeholders for what is real. We are doing things that are authentic and can truly impact a student beyond their daily routine. And as a result, there's the potential for student ownership, there's self-exploration, and there's so many things that then become and create this classroom community. And it's through this community that students feel as though they belong, they have a place, they have a purpose. So after I got their consent, the next part of this was I just administered a Google survey, and it asked a few questions, specifically, how likely are you to give feedback to others? I just wanted to see on a very simple relationship status with each other, are they comfortable giving feedback to one another? How likely are they to take another art class? I was seeing, are the introductory level students excited about what they're learning? Do they want to continue this process? And then the third question that I asked is, how likely are you to pursue in the field of the arts? And again, I was trying to keep this vague. The second part of the survey started to ask questions to students that were a little bit more invested in their ideas. So looking and using a Likert scale, I asked students on a scale of 1 to 5, how creative do you think your ideas are compared to others? And, creative being 1, to not creative on the other end of the spectrum. And I was very much invested in how they perceived themselves as artists. Were they worried about what their peers thought? Were they worried about how others interpreted their work? The second question then asked students on a scale of 1 to 5, how confident are you in your own artistic abilities? So thinking about those advanced learners, even though I identify those students as being advanced, do they each see themselves as being advanced? Do they value each other's opinions as greatly as I do? And then at the introductory level, seeing that same comparison, and if those students are making connections and making meaningful relationships with each other, which again, from many of the articles, including Xin Ma, who presented this idea of what it means to be an adolescent and what it means to belong, was really beautifully, eloquently stated in that the act of forming relationships with one another and being able to share ideas of their own self was really impactful. And then on a third question that I asked was, on a scale of 1 to 5, how accepting are you to receive feedback? So again, just another way of interpreting their understanding of the comments that they share with each other, the impact in which what they're saying can have to their peers through several relationships, whether it's myself and a student to a student, and then a student to someone else. So there's several facets in which it means to belong. So from the research, I found a whole great variety of data to kind of work through. And at first, it was really exciting to see that majority, and what I would refer to as positive, whether they were agreeing or strongly agreeing across both studios, were invested and wanted to take another art class. most students were comfortable giving feedback to one another, and most students were simply accepting of the feedback they received, whether it was from myself or from peers. Now, where we started to see some difference in the data between introductory and advanced was my advanced students were much stronger in terms of strongly agreeing or feeling more creative in their ideas over my introductory students, which was, not totally unexpected, but I was kind of hoping that the introductory level would have had a greater feeling of sharing. But again, that kind of speaks to that community where we're putting together learners for the first time, while an advanced group does have some skills and abilities that maybe that introductory level does not have. So, kind of looking at this study from a wider lens, I'm really noticing that choice does impact a classroom, but for as heavily as I've invested in choice, it's not the only means to fostering a welcoming and strong sense of community. To feel a sense of belonging is deeply rooted in the relationships that we bond and create with students. And it's not just the relationships that happen in class, it's the relationships that happen outside of class. And what I mean by that is acknowledging that what they're doing outside of school and outside of our class is just as important, if not more important, than what we're doing in class. The challenge is what I found in the conversations that I'm having with students is that making myself vulnerable at times and sharing about myself allows those students to feel comfortable and open up to me. And now they're feeling this sense of belonging and almost being able to articulate their thoughts that much easier. Now, looking ahead, it would be my hopes to expand upon this data and probably focus some of these points a little bit more, because I have gone in several different facets where I'm thinking about community, I'm thinking about what it means to belong, and now this idea of choice. This felt like the most natural fit for me in this circumstance, but I think having a wider range other than my own students might help me to see the impact of what my students are doing or maybe not doing. I would definitely say that there's more data to be collected, and not just through observation. I would love to almost hear, and I got this from my small peer group, of offering questions that reflect in the opposite way. Why would you not want to give feedback to a peer? Why is it that you believe that your ability levels are not the same as someone else's? So kind of flipping the lens to see if students might operate or answer in a different lens might be really interesting. So again, I welcome any feedback. I've been really excited to kind of watch this unfold throughout the past few weeks, and excited to kind of see where this may lend itself as I move into graduate seminar next semester. So thank you again, everyone. I wish everyone a wonderful rest of their weekend, and I hope to hear back from you soon. Thank you. Good night.